Invention is usually copying. So what you need to do is very tight in your market. And I tell anybody out there who's starting your business, there's a patent on that package. We made about 200 million of them a year.
Welcome to the Iron Mind Podcast. I'm Josh Brumley, lawyer, author, professor, and now podcast host. Join me as I dive into conversations with entrepreneurs, artists, business owners, and other leaders shaping the world. This is the Iron Mind Podcast. Mark, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, you're very welcome, man.
Very excited to get to know you a little better. So tell us about what it's like to be an inventor.
Well, first off, let me tell you about the fucking Eagles. Okay,
okay, let's start at the top.
That's the most important thing.
All right.
You know what I mean? We sent them Kansas City. We sent them bitches home. Okay.
Go Birds.
Go down. Fucking Eagles. That's the way you see
fucking
it.
Eagles.
I-G-G-L-E.
E-L-G-L-E-L-S.
Yeah, but in the
Eagles.
city, it's fucking Eagles. You know, we don't have time. So I'm going to done with my representation.
Okay, you had to
check
start
it
off
out.
the podcast.
Birds, we're out.
All
Done.
right, deal.
Now we're going big time. Anyway, so you want to know about being an inventor. You know, I think the best way to explain that is, invention is usually copying. I think most people look at something with the help of a patent attorney. You try to dig into how can you potentially design around something that is really cool. So basically, what I'm talking about, and I think people know this thing out there. Maybe not. If not, go look at it in a magazine. It'll help you. But anyway, when you buy coffee, right? Specialty cool
Love coffee.
Okay, cool coffee.
Give us some brands that use your bag.
Stumptown, Blue Bottle, Cafe Vita, La Colombe back in Philadelphia, Intelligentsia, roll all around, and you'll see our product, which we have 5,000 customers when I sold it. It's just basically everywhere, and that's about 60 countries. Okay, so
and this product is a bag.
It's a bag. It's not like I'm not roasting coffee. Mm-hmm. Fuck that. I'm not tasting coffee. Anybody who asks me about the cup of coffee, I say it's good shit.
Yeah.
That's some good shit, right? I want to sell them the bag, okay? So I sell them the bag. We print the bag. We do all that cool shit. And it does take a lot of hard work to do that, to keep these very finicky people that their bag looks really pretty. And in the middle of that bag, those of you who drink a lot of coffee will know what's called a little belly button. You squeeze it, you smell the coffee come out. Okay, I could get into the technical details if you want to know about that, but in the end, it keeps the coffee fresh.
And it's a valve that you...
Yeah, it's a little belly button.
You have a patent for.
Yeah, I have a patent on it. Now, that's a relatively small part of my ultimate story in life, but there's a patent on that package. We made about 200 million of them a year in Woodinville, Washington, which took, just a lot of... You got to make machines work, and you got to get it quality control, and shit that sounds easy isn't easy.
Right.
You're fucking around with it for a couple years, then you get it figured out, and then some component fucks up, and then
there's always something.
Yeah, now you're just stumbling all over your dick trying to get this thing working right. But we made it work, and we made it work at a world-class standard. There's 3 or 4 other patented valves on the market. So we had to pick a tight market where we could sell it. We couldn't sell it to Starbucks, Pete's, throw all that shit out. That's not cool coffee, okay? If you're cool, okay? If you're uber cool. Starbucks, bullshit.
Bullshit.
Right? Okay, it's bullshit, all right?
They just lost a big personal injury case, actually. It was all over the news. Like millions of dollars for a burn.
Good.
Coffee burn.
Yeah, man, churn and burn. That's what they do. Dark coffee, just rip it. It's like burning a steak.
Yeah.
You want to get good coffee, just burn the shit out of it, right? And it's all good, So we're not dealing with those people.
Okay.
Way uncool.
But the Cafe Vitas.
Oh, that's cool. That's one of our clients.
Yeah.
Okay,
we love Cafe Vita.
Yeah, Cafe Umbria, you might know from the
Umbria,
city.
Yeah.
That's our client. Fonte, that's our client.
Any Tacoma guys?
Tacoma guys. Is there anybody that does specialty coffee down here?
I don't want to answer that on the record.
Yeah, I don't know.
I should know the name of
them, but I
probably
should know. It's
like
the cool
Bluebird
coffee.
or something.
All right, fine. We do that one.
Manifesto.
Yeah, we do that one.
Manifestos, you
Yeah,
guys?
maybe,
Oh, dude,
maybe.
Okay. All right. Well,
I mean, you got 5,000 of them.
they probably do.
Yeah, they probably do somewhere along the line, or they bought us and then told us to go eat shit and bought it from somebody else. My normal comment is, if you go and buy from somebody else, what I've learned is, if you buy from somebody else, you go bankrupt.
Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've seen it a million. And the
well,
family
you heard it here,
falls
guys.
apart.
You better buy it here.
Yeah, man. I mean,
Your
the
family's
family
gonna fall apart.
Yep.
You're gonna go bankrupt.
A lot of shit goes wrong. A lot of shit.
Better buy
goes
these
wrong.
bags.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Where do they get your bags?
Well, we make them in Woodinville, Washington. Most
Pacific
of them.
Bag Incorporated?
Now it's Tricor Braun Flex. I sold in 2019.
Okay.
Big company bought it. Gave me a good price. We were doing about $40 million when I sold the business. Gave me a good price, and I said okay. I was 59, and it's like, boo, you gonna give me that money?
Yeah.
Now, I think it was the best negotiating I ever did. They said the number, right? And I'm at the lunch table, and I'm like, holy shit, right? I'm like, fuck me, So, but I sat there and I did the
serious face.
Yeah, I did.
You poker faced him.
Let me think about that.
Yeah.
I gotta give that some thought.
Did
And
you counter?
No, fuck no. I ain't counter for shit. The one thing I said to them was, this happens when somebody's going to buy a business. They get their hooks into you, which I had this happen previously, where it's like buying a house. You get the woman to buy a house, and it's you go out to look for a house like 550s, and before you know it, you're up to 650s.
Yeah,
right, because the emotions are in there.
Yeah.
So what the big investors want to do is they want to give you a hard on. Right, so you get a hard on. They're like, "Oh man, X million." Then they say, "Oh, we got to do our due diligence," which means go to your place, search all over, try and find something you're fucked up, and then say, "Oh."
Like when you're buying a used car and you're like, "Look at these scratches. There's no
doing the
scratches
same thing.
there. The bumper's sagging."
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, I said to them, honestly, I did say this because I wanted a good negotiating position. I moved out from Philly 20 years ago. I got 5 daughters. I'm married. I'm making good money. What the fuck? I started in inside sales, so I'm making good money. And I just said to them, listen, if you start fucking around with me and start dropping the price, start doing weird shit, I know I got books, good books. I know I get audited. I know all that bullshit that's going on. I'll just leave. I'll leave on principle.
Yeah.
I just don't dick me. I've done it before. And
that's
I will.
what you said to these newer guys.
Yeah, I mean, I just say, don't dick me.
Oh,
That's a little inappropriate.
A business version of that.
I said, listen, I don't want to be rude to the fellow. I really don't. I'm in a position now that's something that I didn't think I would be in as a young man. I am here now. I have 5 children. I moved across the country. And at this juncture, I just don't need any hassles.
Yeah.
I don't. And if you start to try and sell a company, what you learn is, your employees will find out.
Yeah.
They'll sniff it out. And then any of your competitors will sniff it out. Then they start saying shit like, don't buy from them anymore. You don't know what's going on with them. Then the shit starts flying. Now all of a sudden your market position starts to slip and your value starts to slip.
And then the price
goes down. It's a fucking game. So the name of the game is somebody wants to close a business on a sale. It's really, your question is, when am I getting my cash?
Yeah.
We'll do our due diligence. I know that's all going to be good. I just want to know, what's the date you're giving me my cash? And then they think you're kind of crass. Like, whoa, let's not talk about that. I'm like, the only reason we're talking is for me to get the cash.
Yeah.
I mean, look,
I'm not doing you a favor here.
We ain't friends, okay?
This is a
you
business
give me
move.
the money, you get the business. And then they'll
Here's
say
the
things
keys.
like, they'll also say things like this, like, well, how about we do, really what we'll do is we'll give you $10. And you go, oh, right on, $10. But, we're going to give you 7 because what we want to get a guarantee is that you continue to have the performance of the company, and then you get the 3.
So,
and then they jack up the forecast. They say, oh, you did 10. Now I want 13. Well, you didn't. That's not what you would have said. But now your dick's in a vice.
Yeah.
Because
you need that other 3.
You ain't getting the 3.
No.
Let's cut you a chase. Oh, we'll tie it into the value. What the fuck is value?
Yeah.
The value is the 10.
Yeah.
So, so you go, hey, I don't want any holdbacks. I don't want any of that crap. Lock, stock, and barrel, buy the business. Most people do not have that opportunity. And most people, when they hear 10, their eyes light up and they go, oh, 7, they take it. Boom.
So I'll sign whatever you want.
Give me the 7.
Yeah.
But I don't worry. If somebody said 30% less than what they were going to offer me, and I would probably have said yes, maybe. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But at that point, once they said the number, I was like, no, I'm not going to get, my balls wrapped in a vice around your big company dictating where my market is.
Right.
My market's very tight. Believe it or not, when you're selling bags, okay, this is some bore-ass shit, Okay, who the hell wants to do that? You know, who wants to be 17 and thinking when I'm 59 I'm going to be a bag man? I mean, that's not where the goal is.
Right.
So what you need to do is very tight in your market. And I tell anybody out there who's starting your business, you know, everybody thinks when they start a business, you know, oh, I got to keep Harry happy, Joe happy. I got to go get the person who, you know, loves every drop of coffee. I got to go after this, that, and the other. No, bullshit. You keep narrowing. You narrow it down to where you have maybe only 200 or 300 clients, but they love you. They love you. And you just tighten that shit up because you're
Focus on a small market segment.
Get in there. Get a niche. A lot of people can't do that. They don't have the discipline or they don't know the market. And they're trying to make money. They're trying to make too many people happy.
So they get really hungry.
Yeah.
They start spreading themselves too thin,
Yep.
and then they lose the quality of service. They
Yep.
lose the quality of the good.
They start getting too big. Overhead chews them up.
Yep.
Overhead will screw you butt fast. You know, they get in a bunch of debt. You know, now they got to have the fucking shiny chair.
Yeah.
You know, they got to, I got to get swag. Everybody wants swag. Give me T-shirts. Give me hats. I mean, maybe you need it. Go ahead.
We do have a lot of swag over here at Brumley
listen,
Law
I'm
Firm.
not criticizing it.
Your entire background is our swag there.
That's
But
cool.
hey,
It looks great. You know, but, you know, everybody's got to market their business
Right.
differently. But for me, it was always like, hey, we need pants. Like, pants? What do we need fucking bag pants for?
Yeah.
You know, and then hats. You know, we need makeup. You know, we need, you know, you're like, what? You know, we need 80 pens. You know, pens.
Yeah.
You know, I wipe my ass with pens. I get them from a place. I throw them out.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. So we do cool shit, but that they need. But
Right.
don't get caught up in that. Again, that's just overhead.
I think a lot of businesses get really excited about putting their logo on something and then giving it away. And there's a level of vanity to that other people do not see the quality or the value in whatever you're trying to give them that has your business name on it.
Yeah, it's like for me, I used to buy Patagonia, right, all the time. I stopped buying Patagonia when they start putting their goddamn name all over it.
Yeah.
I'm not advertising your shit. You know, I paid for it. I want a nice shirt.
Yeah.
Last fucking thing I want is your big Patagonia. It's either trying to show people I'm rich or it's promoting their product. I don't need to do that.
Right.
You do that shit behind my shirt.
Yeah.
You know, we got a nice little tag.
Yep.
Says I got good shit on. I don't need anything else.
Right.
So I just stopped buying. I said that to a couple sales guys there. I said, what's going on?
But what do you buy now?
I buy like, dude, I'm rich, man. I buy all sorts of shit. I go to Nordstrom's, I buy shit. You know what I do? Throw it on the ground. Just throw it on the ground. I say, I don't care. I got money. Right? Just for fun. You know, give it back to the kid. Hey, kid, here, wear this stuff.
Here, wear this. I love it.
You know.
But do you think
No,
that
I will purchase now very good clothing only because I've traveled and worn enough. I traveled internationally.
you see when clothes don't stand the test
Yeah,
of time?
they just don't. You know, you're looking like you're in a burlap bag.
Do you think that people who are wealthy choose not to wear clothing that illustrates how wealthy they are, and people who aren't wealthy choose to wear clothing that pretends that they're wealthy?
Let's say this. My wife is Polish, right?
Mm-hmm.
She was raised poor in Philly. She goes and buys the cheapest shit in TJ Maxx that you can find. You know,
And looks like a dime.
That's it.
She's-
I think she's foxy.
Yeah.
35 years. I mean,
That's
she's
a long time.
a little bit of
5 kids
You know, as
together.
Bill Murray was it? Bill Murray? Donald. What was his name? McDonald.
Norm Macdonald.
Norm Macdonald. He used to say, "I'm married to a battle axe." You know, I'm married to a goddamn battle axe.
Love it.
But she's tight and cheap. You got 5 daughters. Nothing. As I moved along in life, I started to buy nicer clothing because it was nicer.
Yeah.
Now, was there some cachet at a socioeconomic level? Sure. We're all vain. I mean, I'm a fucking vain. Who isn't? You know, I got a nice car. I make money. I go get a nice car. Does everybody think I'm cool? Probably not. They probably think I'm a dick, you know? Like, I got this Mercedes 550 CL, fat guy, whatever, important car, right? So I'm sliding around on the road, you know, and I think I'm pretty cool. I drive up to somebody who's got like a shitty car, I look at them, sneer at them, you know.
Look
like,
down your nose
Yeah,
at
I
them
do,
like,
like,
okay,
check,
peasant.
roll down my window, say, get off the road with that shit car, right? So my daughters say to me, you know, Dad, do you mind not dropping me off pulling all the way up to
Like,
the entrance
drop me
to
down
school?
the block.
Yeah, you know, you're fat, Republican dick, you know? And I'm like, oh man, I worked my balls off to be here. How did I get to be this much of an asshole?
Yeah.
But, you know, all that joking aside, I'm going to pivot back to business. You know, how do you do well in business? This is my position, okay? I don't want to get into all my bloody stories, but I got clean when I was 26. I'm from a family of 8 in Philly, all very high performers. Needless to say, when you're stumbling out of rehab, you're not the high
Highest
performer.
Yeah.
So what do? I need a job. You know, and I say to anybody who's younger, and I talk publicly about this, and I do public speaking, I coach kids, and that is, you got to get a fucking job. It's pretty, you know, this is not hard, you know, and if you want to look for what's fun, okay. But understand, every year that you're not working, somebody is, you know, and right now, like it or not in our country, the Asians and the Indians are coming in here, and I love it. They are busting balls. They want what we got. You know,
You're saying like the global marketplace of labor has made it the cost of labor less expensive in the United States.
Yeah, bring it on. You know, what do we have? You know, we're American. You know the culture. They don't. You know, many of them, you know, do they know who won the Knicks game last night? You know, I don't know. I don't give a shit.
I don't know who won the
But
Knicks
you
game.
should know basic, you know what's going on the street.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and you need to use that within your selling in order to beat the other guy. And the other thing you got to do is work your ass off. Right. So I got into inside sales, got a job selling these bags. And the only thing I wanted at the time was a pat on the back. You know, I was a loser. So I got, who are we looking at over there?
Sorry, someone's making noise.
Yeah, hey.
Knock it off.
Hey, who is that? Production? The fuck? I'm trying to run a show here. Jesus Christ. I'm leaving. That's it. I'm leaving. I'm done. I'm done.
Don't go.
I'm filing suit and I'm leaving.
All right.
But
anyway, you were saying.
But what I was saying is I got a job as an inside sales guy. And, you know, I was hanging out with a friend of mine who had done pretty well in the stock market. And he worked in it, worked like a dog. He wasn't some guy who, I lived in a relatively affluent area in Philly. So I got I went to prep school, all that bullshit. You know, so
You went to prep school and had 7 siblings?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. My old man made money, pissed it all away on education. He really did.
Yeah.
Paid for college. And actually, when he passed away, he didn't have a whole lot of money. He didn't.
He spent it all
Yeah, I
taking care
said,
of you
Dad,
guys.
what happened? Why'd you have 8 kids? I'm off the subject here.
No, that's a good subject.
He says to me, why'd I have 8 kids? I listened to that Pope, you know, the whole thing, you know, rhythm method, birth control. He's like, I got fucking 8 kids, you know? I got too many kids.
I got to work hard
Yeah, and
now.
I said, well, why don't you cut 2 or 3 out? And he's like, why? Come on, you know.
You can't
I
have
love 'em.
favorites.
I said, I'm the 6th. Just cut 3 others, not the 6th out. You know, that's all I wanted. But anyway, so in that environment where you're working, we were given a really hard work ethic, you know. And I don't want to play this game, you know, like, oh, I walked in snow and my dad whipped me. No, it was just this prevailing sense that, you know, you're going to go to college. That's not generally a question, you know, in our community at the time, and you're going to get a job. That's about it. So I stumbled and fumbled, got a job selling inside sales. A friend of mine asked me at about 27, he said, you know, are you selling hard? I said, yeah, I'm selling hard. And he goes, are you reading books? Are you listening to tapes? Are you learning like a professional? And I was like, you know, no, man, I'm fucking cool.
Yeah. Why do I need to do that?
Yeah. So I went down on it. You know, I mean, I read books, I listened to tapes, and anybody out there who's in inside sales right now, do not think this is not a serious, studied game. Your competition is Amazon.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, today's environment, and for quite some time, that's who your fight is. So how can you be better than them?
Right.
The only way to do is to learn how to do it. And there are things to learn. There's things like the psychology of selling. I won't get into that, but it's a very significant story. There's a thing like strategic sales. Strategic sales is a very different method that most young men know how to do, men and women. I would argue that when I'm 45, if I'm going to go against a 25-year-old selling, I'm going to beat his ass every time. And that's just me
because
talking.
of the psychological
Because I'm going to
aspect.
know how to do it psychologically. I've done it long enough. I've read enough that I know how to hang in the game. 80% of the sales are concluded after the 6th visit.
6.
Think about that.
Wow.
So, and now you have to come up with 6 reasons. Going in and just saying, yo, dude, fucking Eagles won. No, that's
Buy
not
some
a,
bags.
yo, man, what's up? No, that's not it. You have to go in there and produce a reason to speak to them in some way or another to bringing benefit to them that is outside of your product or your selling. That being sharing some knowledge of the market, something that's going on around the game, coming back and say, hey, maybe I didn't tell you about this. And you're just dropping, things
knowledge
out.
Nuggets.
Just not knowledge nuggets. Like the first call. Here's one to tell guys. The only thing you want to do on a first call is get to the second call.
Right.
Yeah.
And
don't go in there and give some half-hour talk. Snore.
right. This is an introduction.
I say to the dude when I'm coming in, I say, listen, I'm going to take 7 minutes of your time. I'm going to time it. And at the end of 7 minutes, if you want me to leave, I'll walk out of this door. I will not bother you past that. And 9 times out of 10, so that means you condense your shit down, you tell them what you're going to do, and you let them know that you're competent, you really want to help them, and then you say, you want me to go?
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, they're going to say, no, let me ask about this and this and this. And even if that happens, come up with a reason to cut it short.
Because then you'll have a reason
Then
to
you
come
got a
back.
reason to come back. I get these young guys come into me, like one guy selling me American Express products. He went on. Oh, my God.
Oh, dude, I just had that same phone call.
Yeah.
It's crazy. A 45-minute phone call.
Yeah, that's rude.
Hey, do you have time for this? Sure. I didn't know I was agreeing to a 45-minute phone call in that
Yeah.
moment. I thought he meant 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's what it should be. Because then if you do that, you say, I'll be here, and I'll be really quick, and you go longer. Who's the first liar?
Yeah.
You.
Yeah.
And what are you working against in sales? When you work in sales, the first thing you are is people are looking at you like you're up to no good.
Right.
You got to beat that.
You're a fraud person. You're
you
trying to rip
started
me
a
off.
negative. That's where you are. You got to fight back. So, go
So
ahead.
what are things that a young 25-year-old salesperson or someone who, sales touches every business.
Yep.
Sales
Yep.
touches my law firm. It's everywhere.
Yep.
What is in all your years of learning and your experience doing the sales, closing sales, what can they take away? What should they be doing besides obviously spending as much time as they can learning
Yep.
about their product and why they're better and how to sell and how to close, and from people who have studied it and written books on it and written types on it? What can you give as advice for those folks?
Well, like the old answer that everybody said, work hard, but that goes to some extent with anybody who's successful.
Right.
What I would say is that how do you get a passion in something? And this is kind of a little bit of a crude example, but I think it's fair to say, I'm speaking as a man. When you're 16 or 17, what are the things that drive you? Normally it has something to do with testosterone. All of a sudden, you want to get laid. Come on. I got 5 daughters. These guys are banging on my door all the time. I'm just his friend. I'm looking at him and say, shut the fuck up. I know your game and I like you.
You got the shotgun.
Yeah,
you're
no,
ready
I
to
don't
go.
got a shotgun. Nature is nature.
Okay.
You ain't going to stop it. You know what I'm saying?
So you're saying that the hormones drive a kid to want to have money to be able to take girls out?
No. Take this differently. I got a bunch of hormones that are firing away, right? Now I get out of school and I want to do something. Now I'm saying if you could convert 40% of that drive to a profession, you would kick ass. You would just kick ass. Leave the 60% behind. That engine is firing. You don't have to worry about that. Can you peel off 40? Now, the hard thing to do there is what are you going to do with it?
Right.
And a lot of times that passion is not right in front of you. It's just not there. Some people are lucky enough, like yourself, I want to be a lawyer. Maybe that's the case. I want to be a doctor. So on. No, most kids out there have no idea what they want to do. And I say if you are a young kid and don't know what you have to do, you're more normal than the others.
Right.
Don't lose sight of this.
Yeah.
Nowadays, and they're making you pick a major in sophomore year in college. What the fuck? Somebody said to me at 19, they know what they're going to do. I'd say, you don't know what you're going to do.
You don't know who you are yet. You're 19 years old.
You're stumbling on your foot, stepping on your dick. You don't know what you're doing. So let's get it on here. Where do we find that? Right. Well, a lot of times you got to dig for it.
Yeah.
It's not there. It's not in front of you. And think about this when you get your first job. It's an MBA in business. The most important thing you can do is you have not sat in an office. You have not experienced what it's like in an office. You don't know that there's dicks. You don't know that there's a little coffee clutches that'll screw you over. You don't know that actually Joe, who's the whatever sales manager, is more important than the owner.
Right.
Because the owner's a dud.
Yeah.
You know, he's just some lazy ass who sits there. I'm not saying they are, but it may be.
But these are different scenarios that after you've got life experience, after you've been in the workforce, you start to see and you can say, okay, now I know I'm passionate about this thing, but maybe not in this circle, and I need to find another business.
Yep.
You could start to weed it down and narrow down what you'd like to do based on what you've experienced.
Yes.
And when you're 19, you don't have life experience.
No, you don't. But and let's, you know, and then I would say, as best you can, stick around for a couple years. You got to get a degree. How do you get an MBA?
Yeah.
You know, you sit around, bore ass yourself for 2 years to get an MBA.
I loved my MBA program.
Well, okay,
I
fine.
Personally, it was,
all right,
it was
fine.
fun.
Well, you're different. Okay, fine. Mr. Cool.
Mr. Nerd.
Look at him. Mr. Cool, hanging out, you know? Not me. I'm stumbling around. Honestly.
Dude, I loved it.
So now I start selling these bags. And what happens is I start really getting fired up about the process. Then all of a sudden, my peer group are more technical people. So now I'm talking to somebody who's like, oh, dude, I just study bags and the way they're made. And you're like, what the fucking weirdo?
Yeah.
What do you do that for? So if you're intellectually curious, which I loved stats, I just loved them. So I would always say, well, how do you know that thing's going to stick together? You know, then all of a sudden he's saying, well, you ought to learn about the glue. You're like, what? And then, you know, then you end up studying about the glue. It's very specific. Then you go, well, how do you know the ink's going to go on right? And he goes through all that. You know, and before you know it, you're getting pulled in to the truly technical aspects of it. And then you start getting a hard on for that.
Right.
You know, now you're going to trade shows. Freaking dog's trying to bite me. But anyway, so now you're all of a sudden you find yourself, you're immersed in something that you don't even start thinking about it as a bag.
It's just a product. It's a passion. You're just excited to learn more about it.
Yeah, now you're reading stuff on weekends. You know, I'm a big believer in read stuff in your market. You will not understand the words. That's not the issue. The issue is as you speak to other people, you start to pick them up.
Right.
Like, water-based adhesive. You're like, well, what's that? You know? Mm-hmm. And you don't even know what it is. Then the next time you're in a conversation and somebody says, water-based adhesives are really good. And you're like, oh, that's cool. Why? Then, you know, all of a sudden you find yourself running down that rabbit hole. I would say anybody in any business, there is more knowledge to learn if you try than you can get to learn in your life.
I think about that all the time. It's actually a depressing thing for me because I will never know everything there is to know about my area of law. And every time I get a new fact pattern, a new problem, it's exciting. I've got to do legal research. And then I've got that in my tool belt. And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm one case smarter now than I was yesterday. But there are infinite numbers of new problems. And I think, damn it, I'll never know everything.
I'm 65.
I'm
you think
close.
I don't know that? Get the hell out of here. You're barely out of your diapers. How old are you?
38 until April. 38 until April.
Yeah, let me tell you an interesting story. Not interesting story, a fact. I was 37. I had 3 kids, and I'm in Philly, right? And I'm like, I got to get out of this. I felt as though there was a whole.
You were still selling bags at that point.
Still selling bags, of course. And now I'm the Mr. Cool. Right, I'm
the
where
Mercedes
it's at.
SL guy.
No. I'm driving like the high-end Toyota.
All right.
Okay, but I'm short of the mark. Right, I'm not cool, but I got a house. You know, it's good. You know, and I projected in my mind, where am I going to be at 55? So where I'm going to be at 55 is I'm going to be getting paid too much, and I'm slowing down. What are they going to do in the bigs? They're going to draft somebody younger, and they're going to whittle your ass out. Tough luck. That's what it is.
That's business.
You know, that's business. You don't like it? Get out. It's money. And once you come to that comfort in your mind that it is money, and that's not bad. It just is. You know, everybody's looking at the bottom line. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. Stop this. Oh, they don't understand that I'm passionate about the business. Yeah, I do need you to be passionate, but I need to make money on that passion.
Right.
So I was
if I can have the same version of you, but 20 years younger, who's going to work nights and weekends because he's passionate and hungry and doesn't have a family that he's got to get home to at 5 o'clock, that person is going to add to my bottom line in a different way than someone who's maybe not 20.
Yeah, the best guy to hire is somebody with a house and a bun in the oven. Yeah. You know, I mean, that's the guy you want. He's busting balls because he needs, if he has, you know what, I'm not allowed to ask that in interviews. You got a house? Yeah. Your wife pregnant? Huh?
I can't imagine.
Really? How much sex
quickly.
do you have with her? Tell me something.
The fastest lawsuit in my industry is that question. Wow. That
Is she hot? You got any pictures? Tell me a dirty
Jesus
story.
Christ.
You know? So,
yeah. I'm
anyway.
shut down the same day. Shut down.
Yeah.
Shut down.
So I'm at 36 and I'm lying around in bed and I truly start to think, I can't do this. I can't.
Not at 55, and I'm thinking about the future.
Not only that, every day I give them, they can't give me enough money to pay for one day in my life.
Right.
It's just not there. Now, some people are cool. They want to be 55 and be where they are. That's cool. It couldn't be me. So at 37, I had a 1-year non-compete, company in the same business. That's where I, cut my teeth. And I just said, I'm out. And I'm out. I found a job locally, about 40% less money. Treading my life back like a son of a bitch, waited 1 year, and that's when I hooked up with this company out here that had started the patent on this one-way valve, but it was quite some distance from being made properly. And I was like, oh, I could get that, I could redesign it, and I could repatent up. So we did that. But the move across the country involved two things. First, on the way, I got her pregnant again. Why not? Listen.
Why not?
The world is tough, right? I got to keep her pregnant so she doesn't leave. You hear what I'm saying? Every few years I think, we got to get. Come on, where's she going to go?
Still now, even.
Yeah, I'm an insecure man.
Yeah, I get it.
Who knows? Somebody could snap my chick up like that.
You got to keep her locked up.
It going. So anyway, the bottom line is I make the jump to come to Seattle, and Seattle, I get out here. This place is fucked up. Okay, when you're from Philly, like. A lot of shit, like they stop the car when you're going across the street. Yeah, I'm like, what are you doing? The first guy who did that, I thought he was trying to give me shit. So I'm staring at him like, what's your problem?
Yeah.
But I had to learn these things.
We're just a lot nicer, more polite drivers
nicer,
here.
Yeah, or like they talk like they want to know, like ask you questions like, oh, how was your weekend? I'm like, how about we get this straight? I don't care about yours, and you don't care about mine.
Let's give me my goddamn coffee.
Yeah, let's get to work. And really, that's what we want to do. We don't need to do all that. I don't mean how was your weekend, but let's not get into it in any great detail.
Yeah.
We really, can we be honest? We really don't care.
It's the Philly in you.
Oh, I had a cold. Oh, that's good. You got a cold. Okay, what do you want me to do? Talk about your fucking cold?
Where does this end?
Yeah, where does this end? So what? I played Parcheesi. I don't want to know. Parcheesi's an old game. Never, you got to know that one. That's an old one. But anyway, so no, I come out here, and that's when the game turns on because now they tell me I'm going to be big boss. Stupid. I'm 37. I don't have a contract. Things you learn when you gain some. I thought it was just we're all good. I got out here. It turns out the investors who own it, it starts to go to shit. Unbeknownst to me, they're going under. Didn't know it at the time. I'm 2 years in. I have my 5th kid, and they say we're going to close up shop unless you can get the sales up. If you can't make that commitment, here, this is your pink slip. You can leave now. Here's $50,000. Get my kids all the way back across the country with 5 kids, or stick around and let's hit the numbers. So what am I going to do? I'm going to stick around. I'm going to hit the numbers. I don't say this about a lot of people. I haven't professionally. I got 2 jerk-offs I'm working with, full-fledged pussies. Now they start trying to blame me. What I don't realize at the time, and these are the weird things that happen in life, what I don't realize is that my 16 years in the business, when it starts to go in the shitter, they come around and say, who can help us run this business? We got to get our money out. That's all they care about. So they turn around and they look at me and say, hey, you've been doing it for 16 years. What, when they honestly said to me, what do you think this other guy does for you? One of them, I literally said this. Is this phone call being taped? No, I did. It was a Saturday. And I said, I just want to guarantee this. Nobody's listening on this phone. They said, no. I said, he's a dick. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's running this thing down the tank. I'm just telling you, he is. So they said, well, what if we were to push him to the side, give him a little piece of the business, and make him go away? They did that. And they gave me 10%, which at that point, 10%, I'm like, is that debt? Do I get the 10%?
Yeah, yeah. I signed up to help pay your bills.
Oh,
at
and by the way, you owe $100,000, Mr. Howley. So they're like, no. And the other one is, do I get a paycheck? Because I've been screwed by these people.
Yeah.
I didn't know these investors were in the background. So what they end up doing is like buying a house. They kick everybody out of the house. Now they say, we own the house. It's my business. At which time they're saying, no, what are you going to do to get our money out? So I have to do a 3-year plan. To which, for anybody who does a 3-year plans or anything like that, don't do this wild speculation of what you're going to grow. Lock into what your market is. My market grew at about 7 to 8%, tight margins. Don't fuck around. You're winning and losing on pennies every day. Get your profit up. So we did. And in 3 years, we had paid off the bank. Now we have the investors. Now listen, so these people own the company. How am I going to buy them back? Well, I got to find out what's it worth.
Right.
So now I figure out what it's worth. And, again, I won't get into the details. If somebody ever wants to ask me, go ahead. I'll spin their ass around. But it's not that hard, other than if you think practically.
Right.
So they want their money. Now you got to go out and buy or get more money from somebody and get rid of them. But now you still have a mortgage on the house. You didn't get the whole house.
Right.
So now you got somebody. Then you have to do it again. So now
there's a lot of digging that you had to get
another turn, and each turn is getting other people to invest in you. Now investment money, and I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but remember, you can borrow from a bank at 6%. You can borrow from a venture capital, a backup guy at 12%. Equity is the highest risk because if the shit hits the fan, they have shares in it, they got nothing. They're going to want 20, 25%, and they want to turn it in 3 years.
Right.
So now it is money, and it's all cool. You signed it. It's cool. That's what you got to do. Finally got through that. Had to do one little turn after that. Then I was free and clear at 51, taking cash out. And that's when it was like, the first time I was allowed to take a chunk of money out, I called my accountant, and I said, it's a lot of money. Am I allowed to do this?
I don't want to go to prison.
I don't want to go to prison. He says, Mark, that's why I run a small business. Take it and put it in your bank. And I'm like, now that shit sounds good.
Yeah, finally. How many years of grinding
I had been
was
in
it?
business for 52 since 26. Was that 25? 26 years, something like that.
And then you're finally through the bullshit and
the bullshit. Now
just all green pastures now.
Well, I don't know about green. You still got to sell these bags at a penny a piece.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you're winning on a penny,
yeah.
literally. You know, and that requires again service, knowledge, all those things to get that penny. That's what it is. Our game was, 1%. You drop 1% to the bottom line. It's the difference between paying off your debt and not paying off your debt.
Interesting.
Really
slim margin.
Oh, we're in a commodity. Look up bags online.
Yeah.
No shortage of bags. Let me tell you
shortage.
what. So anyway, you get into that target market, you hit it. Now you get to the point where you're making money. Well, how do you retain people? Well, you got 70 people. For me, I did what you call walk-around management. I used my personality. Thankfully, I'm pretty vivacious guy. And I went around and I just talked to people. What up? What's going on? Before you know it, you know who they are. And you know what's going on. That motivates people in a small business.
And you learn, besides getting to know them, you learn what specifically motivates them. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's work-life balance, and that's totally different types of motivators.
80% of the people who leave a company, if you ask them several times, a little long after the emotional stuff's done, they left because of an intangible. It wasn't money. Mm-hmm. It was, I'm not known. I don't get to make my decisions. I don't feel close to people. That's it. And so in a smaller business, I pushed on. Turned out being the best people to get for us was within a 20-mile radius of Woodinville, Washington, where they can be able to leave, come as they want. A lot of people, women that had single children, children alone, be cool. If the kid's sick, why do I want her in the office? That's all she's thinking about.
Right.
Right. So go home.
Take care of the kid.
Yeah, go ahead. You're going to shit. My wife, if my kid's sick, that's all she thinks about all day.
But not you.
Not me? I mean, but really, as a man, I'll call in, so is Corey feeling okay? Okay, and she's eating? Yeah, okay, good. All right, later.
Yeah.
I checked
She doesn't need to go to the hospital.
Yeah, she got to go to the hospital. I'm out of here.
Yeah,
you know, but that's the way a woman, in my experience, will be much different. They'll want to know what are they doing at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's just, I think, women.
And so by managing people with children, you had to be more empathetic to, hey, if your kid is sick, it's okay with me if you go home. And that led to
greater
more
loyalty.
retention and loyalty.
Yeah. So I guess over a 20-year period, probably of 70 people, probably 25 were there the whole time, maybe 30.
That's a good ratio.
Yeah. Just because. Now I say in business, here's the rule that should be on every employee manual, right? Don't be an asshole, okay? Really, we can snap it up in that word, And if you don't know what an asshole is, you're an asshole,
right?
Okay, and we got a problem with you not knowing you're an asshole, and probably you're not going to make it real long here or anywhere.
Do you? When you transitioned out of the business, how were the people who were left behind treated who had that tenure? Were they worried about their jobs?
They were, and that was a big emotional thing for me and a hard one.
Because they helped build what you helped
and I asked, there's 3 other guys who had small percentages in it, and actually I kept holding back, like, I don't want to fuck them over.
Right.
And then they came to me and said, Mark, you moved all the way across the country. You're 59. It would be irresponsible. Like, do it. So the company that was buying me, they assured me everything. They re-upped the contracts on 6 or 7 of the people that were there. But I will say, thankfully, they did not screw me. Of 70 people, they've had all of them,
retained.
Other than those that want to leave.
Right.
You can't stop that. I will say with a bigger company, their passion is a little lower, because now they're in this, underneath this, big, huge thing.
Umbrella.
But you're not going to lose your job. And I was really proud of that.
Good.
Or proud that they stuck up to the word. That normally does not happen.
Yeah.
But when you stop being the boss, right, that's weird, because for 30 years you've been coming and busting your balls really hard.
Right.
And I always thought to myself, like, I'm just hip, dude, I'm the boss. It's okay. Bullshit. I'm a vain motherfucker. The minute I couldn't be CEO and owner, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. I had a pile of cash, but I didn't like it. And it's a very big transition in your life for anybody who's looking at maybe selling young or selling old, that it's something to really ponder. It's been hard for me.
It's like that type A, years of I'm going to grind, I'm going to grind, and then it stops. Boom. And you say, what do I do? What's my worth now if I have no work to go to?
Yeah, man, I want the buzz.
Mm-hmm.
I want the buzz.
So how did you do? What did you do? What's
well,
the
that's
cure?
still a little, okay.
You go on my podcast and that helps?
No, I'm deeply depressed. I've gone back to drugs and alcohol.
No, don't say that.
I now have a mistress.
Jesus
My
Christ.
children are, I talk to one of them. No. No.
Okay, good.
Yeah, good. No, well, that's a great plan. No, what I really have done is what I've tried to do is, when you're in drugs and alcohol and you got a really big problem, there's a thing called euphoric recall, where you look back on aspects of your life and you say, wow, that was great. And that's what will make you come back to finding, go back to that you don't see the bad that happened. Mm-hmm. And when I'm 59, I'm like, I want to go back in the game. I want to go back in the game. For me personally, 3 times in my life, I had really serious depression and anxiety. I had to see a therapist. I had to see a psychiatrist. It was fucking nasty. But I never missed work. I never did. But the inner brain was torturing me and saying very mean things to me. For whatever reason, I guess as a driver and a pusher, I would think you're no good. You're lousy. Objectively, you're good. But really, you suck. Mm. And, and that was really...
That imposter syndrome starts to see.
Yeah. Go into my office and I'm like talking to people. I'm like, yeah, we're going to do this.
But you got to put on a brave face, and internally you're like, I have no fucking idea if this is
I'm going
work.
back to my office. Sometimes I would just close the door in my office for like an hour or two and I'd have to just say, stay here.
Yeah.
Just be here, and it sucks. And anybody who gets to that point... I don't give a fuck. I take medication. You know what?
Yeah.
Fuck this. I'm crazy. This world is fucking crazy.
That's true.
And there's so many things going on that to me, it got me depressed. And then depression will frequently lead to anxiety because you're trying to get out of it. So what I have found is in my retirement is to not allow myself to fall for the euphoric recall. Realize that's really what owning a business was. It's hard work and it's emotionally straining, very much so. To the point where I wouldn't say this, but at 37, my dad said to me, "That's a big move, Mark. You know, being poor and working, there's no glamour in that. There isn't." And I would almost say to a guy 37 who said that, I might even say, don't do it. You know, I might. But I'm not going to stop you. I know that. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're going to do it, anybody young out there listening, you got to do it. You got no choice. It's not going to go away.
Right.
So just fucking do it. You know, until you fuck it up. You know, and I would bet if you fuck it up, you're going to do it again. Because that's just the way you're wired. So when I'm done, what do I deal with that being wired? Well, first I had to continue to tell myself that I'm not going to do that any longer at that level. I'm going to be involved. I'm going to do business, but I just want to do it. I want to do it. So, you know, I'm hanging with my therapist one day, okay? We're talking about me. What else are we going to do? You know, I'm very important. I'm paying you to talk about me, so I'm going to talk.
Yeah.
Right? So he says to me once, he goes, "Mark, do you know you're there?" Now, that's a pretty intense existential question. You know, you got a nice house. You got 5 children. We have 4 fucking donkeys in my yard.
Donkeys?
Donkeys, donkeys, Donkeys. Okay, I don't know what
the Philly way to
they're
say
little.
it?
They're little mini things,
Like
they
a horse?
shit all over, yeah, that little tiny thing.
You
come
just
up
bought
to
a
your
bunch
hip.
of donkeys?
My wife did.
Well, Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
right,
The
they
level
shit.
of life that you live,
I
man.
mean,
It's
check me out, right?
the 1%.
Oh,
just buying
man,
donkeys
1%.
for fun.
Yeah, I don't even talk to people other than people my rich, you know?
Yeah, that
don't
makes
get
sense.
out of here.
If you don't own donkeys, get out of my fucking face.
Do you have donkeys?
I don't.
Okay.
Does my dog count?
Damn,
He's
I'm
big
out of here.
enough.
I'm out of
He's
here.
Big enough to be.
Yeah,
a dog.
but anyway, so what I'd say is that I didn't know that. You know, I'm like, no, I don't. You know, come on, dig into it. Anybody in your life, are you there? It's a pretty trippy question. So I'm like, you know, no, I'm not there. I get up in the morning and say every morning and go, ooh, check my bank account and look at my pretty house. I'm happy. No, it's life. So what he asked me was, let's work on being happy to just acknowledge you're there and sit there. That's a fucking hard question. I have gotten better at that.
So you're practicing being thankful
Yes.
because you started with much less than what you have right now. And the inner turmoil that someone who's an entrepreneur of always looking at what's the next move, what's the next step, what's the next level. And now you're focusing on taking a beat and just being happy with what you've created for yourself.
Trying.
Yeah. Sure.
Very hard.
Very hard.
And it's not easy.
What
And
advice do you have for people who are also struggling with that?
I would say that the best thing I ever did is I got a truly good life coach. If anybody wants to know the name of the one I use, I'll say it now. It's a woman named Janet Boguch, Boguch. If you care to ask, somebody wants to ask you, I'll get you the information.
Yeah.
This is no nonsense. This is not we're going to be an Olympic star. This is not, we're rock iron, all this bullshit cliches. The goal is to try and build what they say is a portfolio life. And that means like an investment. You do 6 or 7 different things and you focus on them. So now the goal is to make that pie not 90% business, whatever it may be, and the other chunk is family. Now we need to fill them in. And it's very common with people who are wealthy, especially men in their early to mid 50s, to just steam along. But if you can get to the point where you detach and you have those things, you've cushioned yourself against some of the disaster. So I do a lot of public speaking until pandemic. I was a commencement speaker at UW Bothell.
Awesome.
I still love to do it. Anybody wants to hear me talk, I'll bring it. Okay, I'll bring it. I don't ask for it, but I have younger men who actually have come to me and want help in their career. I do that. That fills me a little bit. I do my podcast. I get a chance to talk on the Mark Howley Show, by the way.
Yeah.
Hell of a lot better than this one. Okay? I'm telling you. This thing's deadbeat.
We looked at it on Instagram, man. A lot more content than we've got right now. But we're working. Hey, you got a couple years on me.
You're
got
a young
couple
kid.
years.
Just keep chopping. You know what I mean? Maybe I can help you along the way.
All right.
But
I appreciate it.
no money. I ain't giving you any money.
Oh,
but anyway, so no, what I would say is I lost my train of thought here, but what I would say is that you work on trying to find that portfolio in your life, then you start filling it in. But right now, I still don't have the buzz.
Yeah.
And can I get the buzz? And
You're seeking that. You're trying to find it still.
Yeah, I want that. I want to get fucked up again.
Well, in closing, is there anything that you think young entrepreneurs, older people who are interested in exiting their business, what's the advice from where you're standing, where you're looking down at us with all your donkeys? What do you have to say to those folks?
Well, you got to get donkeys first. And then anyway, no, what I would say to a younger person is if truly that's what you want to do, you will learn. It will become so much. It's like it will pull you. You'll go dark. You will in time. Don't do it on a whim. Don't. You'll know when you're ready. In the meantime, study. Study. Okay. And play long. Mm-hmm. Play long. It's a long game. Don't play short. As to an older person trying to sell a business, get a good valuation. There's a way to get valuations. Don't kid yourself. Most small businesses overvalue themselves so much. They think, I put all this time in it. I deserve $10 million. I had a guy ask me that I was going to buy his business. I said, dude, you're not worth more than 2. And that was the fact.
Right.
Financially, that's what he was worth.
But people get emotional about it.
He was appalled. So they would be the 2 things I say to somebody. And you don't have to be like me. There's people who are very chill and cool and do the same thing. And I always want to tell people that. Everybody doesn't have to be that way.
Sure.
You see very calm, cool, and collected people, but they have that same drive. Just won't go away.
It's about finding your passion.
Somehow.
Yeah. Man, thank you so much, Mark. I
Right
really
on.
appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Follow Mark Howley podcast. What's the?
Right on.
Is it at Mark Howley podcast?
It is the Mark Howley Show.
The Mark Howley Show.
What else would it be?
Exactly.
What am I going to call it? Your name?
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you.
Right on. Thank you so much.